Graham says, do you have any stories on Henry O. Godwin, a.k.a. Mark Canterbury? He was a big guy saddled with a pretty crappy gimmick. I mean, he wasn't everybody at that time in the mid-90s. But maybe doesn't get his props as a solid worker and promo as well. What say you?
Well, I didn't get to know him a lot. He was in the faction. If I'd have been aligning myself with factions of the Shawn Michaels faction or the Undertaker faction, he was in the Undertaker faction, and that faction was called what? What was it called?
The BSKs.
And what's that mean?
I think it was Bone Street Crew. I think that stood for, with K for crew.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Bone Street Crew. I don't know where that came from, but he was in there, and I don't think they wanted me and Bradshaw around them too much, so we didn't align ourselves with either group. Not that either group wanted us, but and I didn't really get to know him. I know that he's from somewhere, I think in West Virginia. Am I correct there?
Good question. Carry on.
So I don't know. Well, he and I don't know where he started. I know very little about him except that he was always a good guy. Henry was he was the first Godwin, right?
Yeah. And then he was joined by Phineas. And then very briefly, he was joined by Hillbilly Jim. And then they were joined by Dirty White Boy for about a week as Uncle Cletus.
Yeah, I think Dirty White Boy came in when I think Vince had like an epiphany and he wanted to bring in a lot of gimmicks in. So he brought Dirty White Boy in, and he brought
Tracy Smothers.
Yeah, I think he brought him in and a few more.
The Goon.
Brought the Goon in. And none of those guys worked out. None of them worked out because you may have, if you'd have staggered their entrance a little bit, but you can't bring in a bunch of guys at one time and they're all gimmicks. You gotta have a placement. And because if you got too many people you're trying to get over at the same time, and what happens is none of them got over. So, but yeah, the Henry Godwin was actually a pretty good gimmick, I thought. And it would have worked if they'd have had time to get it over. Big guy and good guy to be around. So I liked him.
Okay, with just because I've decided to go on this, right, so the new generation era, so from 93, 94, 95, 96, around that era, and you were there for 95 and 96, what were the worst characters, what were the worst gimmicks at the time? Because I've got a list of them here. I mean, Henry Godwin, maybe not, it was a bit outdated, I guess, but, we had the Goon, we had, who did we say?
The Goon was a bad gimmick.
Yep. Isaac Yankem.
Read them off to me. I can't remember them.
Isaac Yankem. The Sultan.
Oh, horrible. That was a horrible. It was worse than horrible. What's a level less than horrible? Pathetic. It was actually pathetic. And I felt sorry for Glenn trying to do it. I really did, because there was nothing to that. I mean, there was no really any kind of a line between a dentist, what would happen in a dentist office and in the ring.
Do you think it's one of those things that Vince McMahon just has a toothache one day and just hates his dentist and then makes a character? It could be like that linear.
I think they all sat around a table one day, smoking dope or drinking rum or whatever, and getting drunk and coming up with the stupidest or the most stupid ideas that I think a creative team can come up with. None of them draw a dime. Isaac Yankem, I didn't mind the name that much, but that's where it ended. It was terrible. What was another one?
The Sultan, your best friend Rikishi, was a mute sultan from Samoa.
I never got it. I never understood it. Nobody else did either.
Duke the Dumpster Drozy.
Horrible.
He was doing that before the WWF, I think.
And it was still horrible. If he thought of it or whoever thought about it should be relieved of their position and docked 3 months of future earnings.
Do you know there's a joke about, I don't know if it was a joke or if it was a genuine bet. Apparently, Duke the Dumpster Droese, he had another name on the Indies, and someone bet somebody, Vince or whoever, that they couldn't take somebody who was number 500 on the PWI 500 list of like the year 93 or 92 or something and make a star out of them. And apparently that's where they got Duke the Dumpster Droese. He was number 500 of 500 on some list of PWI.
I've never heard that story before.
There you go. Well, someone write in and tell me if that's like an apocryphal tale.
Okay, I've never heard the story, and that sounds very unlike Vince.
Yeah.
That Vince could take the guy on the 500 list and make him something. He'd have made him something better than that, surely. You know, with all the things I've heard about Vince being a super mind, and his claim to fame is he invented Undertaker. But it's not so much that he invented Undertaker. You can mark that down to Mark taking the gimmick and making it work. They told him what they wanted, and I never asked him or anything, but how it came about, because Mark I don't think he's told anybody who was his advice guy. Has he?
He may have done, but he may have done on one of the Stone Cold podcasts of the video. I'm going to give you a fact. You'll like this that I read recently. Is that the Undertaker name had to be bought from Puerto Rico because there was a tag team in 1990 in not IWA, the other one, Carlos's, or maybe it was even an indie, but I think it might have been WWC, called the Undertakers. And they spent, and Vince McMahon paid like $3,000 for the rights to the name The Undertaker.
For a team in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, from a team in Puerto Rico, yeah.
You know, I got to call bullshit on that one. I'm going to have to throw the flag if I had one. I'd throw the flag on that one. I never heard that before in my life either. Where do you get these little tidbits of wisdom?
It's all up there. It's all up there. No, actually, I read that quite recently. I thought it would be interesting. I'm going to give you some more of the worst characters ever. Flash Funk, that was Too Cold Scorpio. He gave him some sort of like dancing pimp thing.
Well, I think they could have done something with that, because the Flash Funk is just a name and the dance is just a presentation. But I think Too Cold Scorpio was a better worker. He may have been able to be passable, but never like a big money draw.
Clarence Mason, the little lawyer guy. He was a real lawyer, apparently.
That's bullshit too.
A real lawyer practicing in Florida, I think.
No. Wait a minute. It don't even make sense. Why would a real lawyer leave a real job to go prance around? Wouldn't that have hurt his practice wherever it was in Florida?
Probably. Well,
I remember I rode with him one night with Bradshaw. Oh my God. Bradshaw was on that guy, ribbing him and playing with him. I think the guy almost started crying. He wanted to get out, but it was dark and it was 1 o'clock in the morning. We didn't know where we were. He didn't either. So, but he didn't ride with us much after that. So I don't believe he was a lawyer. I'd never heard that before in my life. Now listen, you think you would hear, if he was a real lawyer, you would think that you would have heard that, don't you think?
I can't remember. I think he's like Herman something Jr. or something is his real name. I can't remember his real name, but I actually looked him up and Googled it, and he does have a practice in Florida.
That's 2 flags that I've thrown in the last 2 questions. Okay, we'll check that out. If anybody has any feelings on that or information, let us know.
Okay, I'm
because this is a very educational experience for all of us, even me. So
I'm gonna skip the next one. I'm not even gonna tell you the names because I'll make that a future question because that's got its own idea. That one was in '97, so that was after you left. Barry Windham as the Stalker, where he'd paint his face up, basically like a Rambo character with PTSD in the woods, and he threatened to disembowel people, basically. And then he debuted as a babyface.
Boy, I'll tell you can't get very more touching to people's hearts than threatening to disembowel them.
Mm.
I mean, that kind of puts you on a individual basis with the guy. And I kind of remember that, but it's like, after a while, you don't got to be in a business a long time. Just look at something and say, that ain't gonna go. That ain't gonna go. The fans look at it first, and if they reject it, that's done. You might as well get rid of it right that second. Dump it.
Well, speaking of rejecting immediately, number 2 on this list is the New Rockers. Marty Jannetty and Al Snow, who was going under the name Leif Cassidy.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, Leif Cassidy? And it don't even make sense. What's he, Norwegian now? All of a sudden? What the hell is he?
Well, the name was taken from 2 different heartthrobs. I don't know what
and
Leif is, but David Cassidy was one.
And of course, everybody knew they were trying to replace Shawn Michaels, and it just didn't work. I mean, if they'd probably seen that team first, they may have gotten over. But they saw Shawn and Marty together, that they were great together. I didn't like the way they kind of split them up when, Shawn put him through that glass on that barbershop deal or whatever segment they had. That wasn't a bad little segment on its own, the barbershop. Because everybody knows you go in the barbershop, talk about everything, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't a bad name for a little talking segment because they let you in on all the dirt and all this. But when he put Marty Jannetty through that broken glass, they showed the kids in the crowd, the little kids, they're going, oh my God. See, that's why I always say never do any angle that a 10-year-old kid wouldn't understand. Mm-hmm. And they understood that. And that set Shawn Michaels on his path, single path to stardom. And we saw what he did with that, and he did a great job.
And number 1, we're not going to go in on this because we've already talked about it. I'm just going to go straight to the next question. But number 1 on this, how could it be anyone else but our friend Shane Douglas as Dean Douglas? We're going to leave it there because we have talked about it recently. So we're going to go straight to the next question. Drew.
Yeah, but okay, wait just a second. Dean Douglas, they didn't give him even a chance, really. I mean, that was reversed from the beginning. I mean, they could have done a lot better with that. I think it wouldn't ever got over big time, but they didn't give him a proper introduction. He was just the dean of some unknown college or university or whatever he was. And you never really saw him. I never saw him on a college campus. Did you?
No.
I never saw him pulling up and all the kids are there and, the big, tower that a lot of universities have or something that's synonymous with a certain college. I never saw that. Or never saw him in class, never saw any of that stuff. But because they never did it, so that's why I'm saying they never give him a chance.
They did vignettes with him in front of a blackboard, and that was pretty much it. And
that's it.
Yeah, they gave him the worst dialogue to recite, and they said, "Don't do it like the franchise. Do it like a boring teacher." And it's like, well,
that's horrible.
That's going to really shift some tickets. Well done. Right.
Right. That's a sellout as soon as you do it.